On this feast of St. James, the Apostle, we are called to reflect again on what is authentic leadership. In today's Gospel from St. Matthew, we are told that the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to Jesus to ask that her sons be placed on his right and his left when he comes into his kingdom. Of course, we know very well that it was not the mother that asked this favor from our Lord. It was James and John themselves. But since St. Matthew's Gospel was written much later on, by the year AD 80 or even 100, the apostles were revered in the community, and therefore to ascribe such ambitions to James and John might not sound very edifying. And so, of course, the mother is always to be blamed for the children. And so the mother was the one who was made to ask. In fact, if you were to think deeply, if it were the mother who asked on behalf of the sons, then surely James and John, in the first place, they are not worthy to be leaders. That is why sometimes, even today, in today's world, unfortunately, because our children are overprotected by their parents, even though they are adults, they are 20, 30, 40 years old, and then they have disagreement with the management or disagreement with the authority. Instead of speaking with those in authority, they ask their parents to speak to those in authority, and they say they want to be great leaders. If they cannot even manage their own life, how can they manage the lives of others? And so it is important, therefore, that if we really want to be leaders, we must be able to ask those questions directly. So in the case of James and John, of course, it's a very revealing fact for us that the apostles, before the passion, the death and resurrection of Jesus, they had worldly views of leadership, worldly views of the kingdom. They too were ambitious. They wanted to be set on the right and the left, and not only the other two apostles, but even the other 10, because they were indignant with the two brothers, because they were the ones who asked first, and so they were jealous of their requests. And the point is this, that when we think of leaders seeking for power, for glory, for position, but that is what most people, unfortunately, in the world, they do today. When they ask for leadership, it is about power, it is about wealth, about glory, and about being recognized. When these people, when these are the motives of which you seek for leadership, then it is not to say that it's altogether wrong, but it is not noble. Even if you have this leadership based on these values, you can be very successful even as a leader, because you are able to manage the economy well, manage the company well, the organization well, and you could be considered a successful leader in a particular corporate organization or even a government, but you cannot really claim to be a great leader. And there is nothing really to boast about, because if you can do well, certainly you have had your reward, as the Lord said, because we have paid you handsomely. You have been paid for the blood that you shed for the company. And so in that sense, the gratitude that society would render to you will be much less, because you already have received half the reward. For all the profits you make for the company, you have already a share of it. And of course, what you do is certainly good for the organization and good for the country as well, because it helps others also to participate and to partake of the benefits. But the benefits are actually shared accordingly to those who have supposedly given more. But that is not the kind of Christian leadership that the Lord is telling us. Today, Christian leadership basically is a leadership that is selfless. It is not about our ambition, our achievements, about ourselves. It is always about caring for others. It's about the service of others. That is selfless leadership. The kind of leaders will always be remembered, will always be appreciated, because they didn't work for themselves, but work for the greater good of others. And so not all, I suppose, are called to that kind of service, but at least even for those of us who are working for the organization, certainly they should be paid accordingly. But at the same time, we must remember that even when the organization pays us well, whatever we have in life, even if we have plenty of money, and if we even are entrepreneurs, we can own a big organization, all the money that have been given to us is never for ourselves. Not even for our own families alone. It is always for the common good. And we must use them well. Because if it is only for ourselves, then again, the kind of leadership will not bring you true joy and true meaning in life. Unless you use whatever you have, your resources, for the service of the family. That is important because your primary responsibility is the family, but it is not only the family, but also beyond the family. And so it's important to recognize that whatever achievements we have, whatever talents we have, they're always meant for the common good. And so in this case here, Jesus makes it clear. When the apostles were seeking for the kind of worldly glory and worldly power, Jesus makes it clear. He said, this is not to happen among you. Anyone who wants to be great among you must be a servant. Anyone who wants to be first among you must be a slave. Just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So that is really the kind of leadership that the world needs today. People who are self-sacrificing, people who put the interest of the common good before their own interests. That kind of leadership is at the service of others. It is at the service of empowering lives, uplifting the lives of people. This kind of service, please let us be clear, this kind of service requires tremendous sacrifice. And St. Paul tells us into this first reading, we are earthenware jars that hold this treasure. And that is where the challenge comes. Here we are called to sacrifice ourselves. On the other hand, we know we are limited. We are earthenware jars. We cannot give more than what we have got. And to be in leadership entails suffering. And many people don't realize this. Many people see the frills of leadership. You get this, you get that, you get the privilege. They see all the frills and the privileges. But they don't realize when you assume leadership, when you wear the crown, there are always the thorns will come with them. And this is where many of us, we are afraid of leadership. Sometimes people who are capable, they are afraid to take up leadership because it means to wear the crown. And that is why Jesus asked the apostles, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? So if you want to assume leadership, then you must ask yourself, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? And what is this cup? This cup is not just the cup of self-sacrifice. And that is also a difficult cup to drink, You've got to put others first, put people's interests. You're actually giving your life, your time, your resources for the service of others. And then if you are inward looking, what do I get out of all this? For your parents, actually more the money you earn, 80% goes to your children. Probably they are ungrateful. So 20% you spend on yourself. You should have spent everything on yourself. Precisely as a parent, you make all the sacrifices, but sometimes you wonder, would they be grateful? Would they be able to reciprocate later on? Would they come and look after you when you are old, or just send you to the aged home with the CPF money that you have? They say you said to pay for your nursing home, and that's it. We are not too sure. So when you talk about the sacrificing ourselves, that is actually a real sacrifice. It is not easy in the first place. But when Jesus said, can you drink the cup? It is not this cup. It's the cup of wrath, The cup in the Bible always refers to the wrath of God. When someone is asked to drink the cup, that means it is a cup of wrath. If a person is condemned to die, he is asked to drink the cup. That's why if in the Chinese serious picture, if you're a noble officer, a member of nobility, if they commit a crime, they cannot be executed because they belong to nobility. So the emperor will send a cup, what he calls with the poison all around the range, and you just drink, and of course you die with dignity. We die with dignity, but you are still put to death. So drink the cup is to drink the cup of being rejected, being unappreciated, being blamed for sometimes things you have not done. Is perhaps your colleague or your subordinate has done it. You are called to drink that cup. When people will condemn you, when people will misjudge you for whatever things that you try to do according to your conscience, you think that that's the best thing, and people are not happy with your decisions, that is the cup of wrath. And that cup of wrath is extremely difficult to drink. And Jesus precisely, he has to drink the cup of wrath. That's why we are told in the first letter of Peter, he suffers, he put his sins in his body. He is the one who is sinless but carries our sin. And Jesus suffered in our place. He knows the sufferings that a leader would have to go through. He knows the sufferings of his own brothers and sisters. So when we speak about the cup of wrath, we are also talking about being identified with the sufferings of our brothers and sisters. Those who have gone through, and here we have to help them, and being identified with them in their sufferings, that is to drink the cup of wrath. And that one requires tremendous strength. And most of us, when we face with the cup of wrath, that's why I say there's a big difference between a mercenary and a shepherd. And that is what Jesus tells us in the gospel. A mercenary is being paid. So if you think this one too much, I resign. And even many of our volunteers in church, they think they are missionary. They join, I'm not happy tomorrow, I resign. They think that because they are volunteers. But all of us, we are called to be, the shepherd is the one who dies for the sheep. We are still there even when we have to suffer. And that is really what a true leader is all about. And we cannot do this. That is why in today's first reading, St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, he says, we must make it clear that such an overwhelming power comes from God, not from us. We have difficulties on all sides, never cornered, no answer to our problems, never despair, persecuted, never deserted, knocked down, never killed, because we carry in our body the death of Jesus. So, if we want to really go through leadership, Christian leadership, self-sacrificing leadership, and to be what we call misunderstood as a leader. As a leader, always remember this, we are always misunderstood. Don't think that people will always be appreciative of what we do. People will talk bad about us. And sometimes as leaders, we have the burden of knowledge. We have things we cannot tell everybody. We cannot tell. Not that we don't want to tell, but this is the situation. But this is where we are called to suffer with Jesus, for Jesus, as Jesus suffered for us, for our salvation. And so for the greater good of it, for the greater good of all, therefore we are called to carry ourselves, our leadership, always in union with Jesus and not just on our own strength.